I never thought my own sister would humiliate me in front of the entire family. One moment I was setting the table, the next she sneered. "You're just a waitress. Why are you even here?" Everyone laughed, and I felt the ground disappear beneath me. Have you ever realized in a single breath that the people you sacrifice everything for secretly despise you? What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I held the key to her dream wedding. And when the venue demanded cash, she would learn exactly who the nobody really was. I was 34 years old, standing behind a diner counter, refilling a customer's coffee when my phone buzzed at 2 a.m. It wasn't unusual. My mother often called in the middle of the night, her voice cracked with tears, telling me she couldn't sleep, telling me I was the only one who truly understood her. "Jessica," she whispered once, "you're my rock. Nobody else cares the way you do." And every time I believed her. I left shifts early to bring her medicine, drove across town to fix her broken faucet, and wired her money when she said the bills were piling up. I thought it was love, a bond only we shared. What I didn't realize then was that it was a pattern. Love when she needed me, silence or criticism when she didn't. Being the dependable one became my identity. I worked double shifts, skipped vacations, and quietly funneled savings into a secret account labeled Amelia's Wedding Fund. My older sister Amelia was the golden child, the one everyone admired, and I convinced myself it was my duty to make her dreams possible. She talked endlessly about her big day, the perfect dress, the venue by the lake, the flowers that would put Instagram brides to shame. I smiled, nodded, and wrote another check. Nobody knew the fund existed because it wasn't mine to boast about. It was hers to enjoy, or so I thought. The truth is, blind loyalty feels safe until it isn't. I grew up believing family always comes first. That's what our parents taught us. Protect blood, even if it costs you. So when Amelia asked for help, I gave it. When she looked at me with those manipulative, half-sad, half-proud eyes, I fell for it every time. Love bombing, that's what therapists call it. Shower you with affection when they want something, withhold it when they don't. My mother perfected the craft, my sister inherited it. And me, I was their easiest target. I ignored the small red flags. The time Amelia threw a party and forgot to invite me. The time Mom scolded me for missing a family lunch, even though I was pulling a 16-hour shift at the diner. I brushed them off as misunderstandings. Deep down, I thought if I just gave more, loved more, maybe they would finally see me. Maybe one day Amelia would say thank you. Maybe one day Mom would call me her equal, not just her emotional safety net. But those tears, they were just the opening move. The signs of betrayal were there long before the night. She humiliated me at dinner. I just wasn't ready to see them. I still remember scrolling through social media one afternoon during my break at the diner. That's when I stumbled across a post from Amelia, a photo of her showing off a sparkling notebook captioned, "Saving every penny for the wedding of my dreams. Hard work pays off." Hundreds of likes, comments praising her discipline, her responsibility, and all I could do was stare at the screen, my hands trembling because the truth was sickening. Every dollar in that fund came from me, not her, me. Yet she wore my sacrifice like a crown. I tried to swallow it down, convincing myself it didn't matter who got the credit. As long as Amelia was happy, I was doing my job as a sister. But the knot in my stomach tightened. That day at the diner, while pouring coffee for strangers, I wondered, why was I invisible to my own family? Why was I the servant in a home I had built with my own sweat? The confirmation came in the cruelest way possible. A coworker slid her phone across the counter one evening, whispering, "Jess, you should see this." It was a screenshot from a family group chat I didn't even know existed. My sister, my parents, cousins, all laughing at how Jessica plays Waitress like it's a real career. One message read, "At least she's useful when we need extra tips for cash." Another, "She doesn't belong at Amelia's big day. She'll make us look poor." I felt my chest collapse. My hands grew cold, the room spinning around me as if the world had shifted on its axis. I had been excluded, mocked, erased. My family, those I sacrificed everything for, saw me as nothing more than a servant. And the cruel irony? I had been the one paying for their illusions of grandeur. That night, I hid in the diner's kitchen after closing. The lights were dim, the air thick with grease and silence. I sat on the cold tile floor, my back against the stainless steel fridge, and finally let myself cry. Not the quiet tears I usually wiped away quickly, but guttural sobs that shook me. I pressed my fists against my mouth to muffle the sound, terrified someone might walk in and see the truth, that I wasn't strong, that I wasn't resilient, that I was broken. It was in that fragile moment that I understood something painful but vital. Love doesn't mean loyalty at any cost. Family doesn't always mean safety. And sacrifice without respect is just exploitation. But at that time, I still didn't see the full picture. I didn't know that the very sacrifices I thought had gone unnoticed were about to erupt like a bomb in the middle of their perfect little world. If only I had known that my quiet, invisible devotion was about to explode in everyone's face. The dinner that night was supposed to be a celebration. Amelia had announced it as a family-only gathering, a chance to toast her upcoming wedding. I had been nervous, slipping into a modest black dress. After finishing my shift, smelling faintly of coffee and grease, no matter how many times I washed my hands. Still, I hoped maybe this time things would be different. Maybe she would acknowledge the sacrifices I had made, even privately. Maybe she would thank me. Instead, as soon as I sat down, Amelia's eyes swept over me like I was an intruder. Her lips curled in disdain. "Why are you even here, Jessica? You're just a waitress. Don't embarrass us in front of the family." The words sliced through the air, sharper than any knife. Laughter trickled around the table. Cousins, aunts, even my parents, hiding behind nervous chuckles. And then, twisting the blade, my ex-boyfriend, who had been invited as Amelia's guest, chimed in. "She's right. Some of us actually moved on, Jess." His voice was dripping with pity, as though my life was some failed experiment. Heat rose in my cheeks, shame choking me until my throat burned. I stared at the plate in front of me, the roast chicken blurring as tears filled my eyes. My hands shook under the table, gripping the fabric of my dress so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, to remind them who had paid for Amelia's designer engagement photos, who had covered Mom's hospital bills, who had worked until her feet bled just so they could sit here, smug and comfortable. But my voice caught in my chest, and all that escaped was silence. As I stood to leave, I caught a fragment of Amelia's hushed voice, carried on the careless laughter of her fiancé. "The fund will be enough for the condo deposit anyway. Who cares about a wedding when we can get the apartment?" My blood ran cold. The wedding fund wasn't for a wedding at all. It was her personal piggy bank, my years of sacrifice redirected into a luxury condo she could flaunt on social media. And that's when Jessica remembered. The fund was under her name. I barely remember leaving the table. I only recall the sting of night air on my face, the echo of laughter behind me as I stumbled to my car. My hands trembled so violently I could barely fit the key into the ignition. I drove aimlessly, streets blurring into streaks of light, heart hammering like it might burst out of my chest. Tears came in waves, blinding me, forcing me to pull over at the side of a deserted road. I slammed my fists against the steering wheel, guttural sobs shaking me until I couldn't breathe. My body felt like it had been split in two, one half shattered, the other clawing to hold on. But somewhere in the middle of that storm, clarity struck. For the first time, I wasn't powerless. That account, the wedding fund, wasn't Amelia's. It was mine. Every deposit, every wire transfer, every late-night tip count. It was all under my name. She could mock me, erase me, humiliate me, but she couldn't erase that fact. When I finally made it home, my hands were still shaking. I collapsed onto the couch, my little dog trotting over, tilting his head as if he could sense the storm raging inside me. I pulled him into my arms, burying my face into his fur. His warmth grounded me, reminding me that I wasn't entirely alone, that not everyone I loved would use me. Hours later, still raw but steadier, I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dark as I pulled up my bank statements. Line after line of transactions stared back at me. Tips from double shifts, extra hours, holiday pay, all funneled into Amelia's dream. Each number was a scar, a reminder of nights I spent aching, believing I was building something noble. Now each entry became evidence, each dollar a weapon. I scrolled further, and my stomach churned when I saw the withdrawals she had convinced me to make. The subtle manipulations dressed as emergencies. Rent she couldn't cover, bills she forgot. And now, I realized, pieces of a condo she intended to claim as her own. My tears dried. My chest no longer heaved with sobs, but with something sharper, cleaner, resolve. I wasn't ready to plot revenge. I wasn't scheming to destroy her life, not yet. What I wanted, what I needed, was survival. To stop being their servant. To take back the power I had handed away so willingly. I closed the laptop and exhaled slowly, stroking my dog's head until he drifted off in my lap. The silence of my apartment felt heavier than ever. But inside that silence was a strange calm, a readiness. But revenge wasn't the plan. Survival was, at least at first. The morning after the dinner, I woke up with swollen eyes and a pounding headache. For once, I didn't rush to the diner. Instead, I sat at my desk with a notebook and my laptop open, staring at the blinking cursor. If I had any hope of surviving this storm, I needed more than anger. I needed proof, cold, undeniable proof. I started with the bank statements. Each transfer I had made to the wedding fund was cataloged with dates and amounts. I copied them one by one into a spreadsheet, highlighting the larger sums Amelia had begged for, promising she would pay me back. After the wedding gifts rolled in, I backed everything up on a cloud account. Then on a flash drive, I tucked into the lining of my purse. If she ever tried to twist the narrative, I would have the receipts, literally. Then I turned to my phone. Scrolling through old messages, I began recording audio notes of Amelia's voice. "Jess, can you cover the deposit? I'll transfer it later." Or, "Don't tell anyone you helped, it'll ruin the surprise." At the time, I thought it was secrecy for a sentimental reveal. Now I saw it for what it was: control. I saved every message, every voicemail, and converted them into files labeled by date. But the real dagger came when I dug into the bank app further. There were withdrawals I hadn't noticed before. Transactions Amelia had insisted were urgent venue payments. Curious, I traced them back. The merchant codes didn't match wedding vendors. They matched travel agencies. My hands went numb as I clicked through. Flights, hotels, luxury resorts. Dates that lined up with weekends Amelia claimed she was visiting the venue. I dug deeper, pulling records and cross-checking with her social media. A blurred beach photo captioned vaguely about wedding planning getaways. The man in the corner of the picture wasn't her fiancé. My heart pounded as I zoomed in, the outline unmistakable. It was someone else entirely. My sister had been draining the wedding fund, not just for herself, but to bankroll secret trips with a lover her fiancé knew nothing about. My breath caught in my throat. Betrayal upon betrayal, layered like poison. What if the groom found out the wedding was never about him? For a moment, I almost felt pity for him. Almost. Then the rage returned, sharp and clean. I couldn't do this alone, though. The more evidence I gathered, the more I realized I needed allies. People who could help me navigate the minefield without losing myself completely. I reached out to Mark, a lawyer I had served coffee to for years. He had always left generous tips, always asked about my day. When I explained everything, he didn't laugh. He didn't tell me I was overreacting. He leaned in and said, "Keep everything documented. Don't move too soon. Timing is everything." Then there was Claire, my best friend since high school, the one person who had seen me at my lowest. She offered me her guest room if things got ugly, reminded me that surviving didn't mean hiding. It meant choosing my battles. And unexpectedly, my Aunt Lydia called. She'd always stayed quiet at family gatherings, a shadow at the edge of the drama. But now she confessed she had seen Amelia's manipulation for years. "I stayed silent too long," she whispered. "Let me help you set it right." Still, the strongest support came from the people who had no blood ties to me. My coworkers at the diner. When they noticed the dark circles under my eyes, they didn't pry. Instead, one evening after closing, they pushed 2 tables together, laid out takeout containers, and said, "Sit down, Jess, eat with us." For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like an outsider. The clatter of chopsticks, the easy laughter, the warmth of greasy noodles shared under buzzing fluorescent lights. It was nothing glamorous, but it was real. Unlike the family dinners where I was mocked, here I belonged. It hit me then. Blood wasn't the only thing that defined family. Chosen family, forged in loyalty and kindness, could be stronger than any bond of birth. I left that night with a full stomach and a steadier heart. My coworkers didn't know it, but they had built me a fortress, brick by brick, with simple acts of care. Her blood family had betrayed her, but her chosen family was about to hand her the match to burn it all down. Amelia had always been a master at performance. She lived for the spotlight, the likes, the envy. When she finally secured a date for the wedding, she announced it with a grand dinner party at our parents' house. The chandelier sparkled, the table was covered with fine china, and Amelia floated around in a silk dress as though she were already a bride. "The venue is booked," she boasted, raising her glass. "The most exclusive lakefront property. People will talk about this wedding for years." The room erupted with applause. My parents beamed with pride. Cousins snapped photos. I sat quietly, swirling the water in my glass, my lips pressed together to hide the knowledge burning inside me. Because a day before Amelia's grand announcement, I had emptied the wedding fund. Every cent I had poured into it, every dollar she had squandered. It was gone, sitting safely in a new account under my sole control. The timing wasn't random. I had been waiting for this exact moment, the point where her pride reached its peak, where her arrogance had no way to retreat. The phone rang midway through dessert. At first, no one noticed, but when Dad picked it up, confusion crossed his face. "It's the venue," he said, holding out the phone. Amelia laughed nervously, snatching it from his hand. "Hello." Her voice was sugar at first, but within seconds her expression soured. "What do you mean the deposit hasn't cleared? That's impossible. The fund is—" She froze, her eyes darting toward me, suspicion flickering. The speakerphone was on. Every person at the table heard the venue manager explain that no money had arrived, that without immediate payment, the reservation would be canceled. Forks clattered against plates, the air sucked out of the room, and then silence. Everyone turned to Amelia. Her face flushed crimson. She stammered excuses, blaming technical issues, insisting it was a mistake. But I watched the cracks spread through her confidence. I didn't need to say a word. The evidence spoke for itself. Panic turned to fury in the days that followed. Amelia, desperate to salvage her image, launched a smear campaign. On social media, she painted me as a jealous sister trying to ruin her happiness. She couldn't stand to see me shine, one post read, accompanied by a photo of her in her wedding gown. Friends of hers, people I'd once lent money to, shared it, adding their own barbed comments. Strangers messaged me, parroting her lies. For a moment, I wavered. The weight of public humiliation pressed on my chest. Had I gone too far? Would they all see me as the villain she claimed I was? Then came the twist of fate. A voice note surfaced online, leaked by someone I still don't know. Amelia's own voice, dripping with venom. "Jessica's pathetic. She'll never be more than a servant. She should be grateful I let her breathe the same air." The clip spread like wildfire on TikTok. Within hours, thousands of strangers were condemning her arrogance, mocking her cruelty. The very platform she had used to build her perfect image was tearing her down piece by piece. I sat on my couch, phone buzzing endlessly, my hands trembling as I scrolled through the comments. Some called me a hero, others begged me to share more. I wanted to hide, to disappear into the shadows of my apartment. The attention terrified me. For years, I had lived invisible, unnoticed. Now the spotlight was blinding. My little dog crawled onto my lap, grounding me. I pressed my face into his fur, breathing deeply. Slowly, I realized the tide had shifted. For the first time, people weren't laughing at me. They were laughing at her. For the first time, Jessica realized the world wasn't laughing at her. They were laughing at Amelia. Amelia's downfall began quietly, then spread like wildfire. The venue canceled her reservation, and word traveled fast. By the end of the week, vendors were whispering about unpaid deposits, about a bride who had promised wealth but couldn't deliver. Her bridesmaids, who had once paraded around in matching robes on social media, stopped posting photos with her. Invitations were quietly rescinded, sympathy replaced with ridicule. The final blow came from her fiancé. He had seen the leaked voice note. the articles circulating online. He had confronted Amelia about the travel expenses, the secret weekends that didn't match her story of wedding planning trips. When he realized the truth, that she had drained money not just from me, but to fund a double life, he ended the engagement in one clean sentence. I can't marry someone who lies this easily. The ring was returned, the date erased, and Amelia's dream collapsed into ash. My parents, once her unwavering supporters, were left stunned. The shame of their golden child's disgrace weighed on them. Yet instead of facing the truth, they turned toward me. One evening, Mom showed up at my apartment, eyes swollen, voice trembling. "Jess, we need help. We can't cover Amelia's debts. Could you, just this once, step in?" I stared at her, memories crashing down like waves. All those nights she called me crying, all the times she told me I was her rock, only to discard me when Amelia demanded the spotlight. My chest tightened, but my resolve didn't waver. "No," I said simply. The word left my lips calm, steady, but it carried the weight of years. Her mouth opened in shock, as though the refusal was unthinkable. For a moment, I almost softened. Old habits clawed at me, the part of me conditioned to say yes, to save everyone but myself. But I held firm. That single word was more powerful than any revenge. Life didn't transform overnight, but it shifted. The whispers that once followed me at family dinners were replaced with quiet respect in the community. My manager at the diner, a kind but weary man nearing retirement, called me into his office. "Jess, you've kept this place running more than I have. You deserve more than tips. How would you feel about taking over when I step down?" The offer stunned me. Me, a waitress mocked by her own blood, was being handed the keys to an entire business. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. For once, my hard work wasn't invisible. It was recognized. When the announcement made its way into the local paper, the headline read, "From Waitress to Boss, a story of resilience." Customers congratulated me, co-workers cheered, and strangers sent notes of encouragement. The narrative had shifted. I wasn't the servant in my sister's story anymore. I was the author of my own. Yet beneath the triumph, I craved something quieter. One morning, I stood behind the bar of the diner turned my diner. Sunlight streaming through the windows, the hum of chatter, the smell of coffee brewing. It felt different now. For the first time, I wasn't carrying someone else's dream. I was living my own. My chest swelled, not with pride, but with a peace I had never known. Still, I knew this was just the beginning. Revenge and justice were intoxicating, but they weren't the foundation of a life. I had learned that. True peace came from something deeper, something I was only starting to build. But true peace isn't built overnight. The silence after I said no to my mother was louder than any argument we had ever shared. It was a silence that stretched into weeks, then months. I didn't answer Amelia's calls. I didn't respond to my father's guilt-laden messages. For the first time in my life, I enforced boundaries. No more midnight rescues, no more endless deposits. No more humiliations masked as jokes. I blocked their numbers, changed my locks, and stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. It was harder than I expected. Some nights I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over the call button, aching to hear even my mother's voice. I almost gave in, almost convinced myself that blood meant obligation. But then I would remember Amelia's sneer across that dinner table, or my parents' laughter when I was dismissed like a servant. Each memory steeled me. I wasn't their safety net anymore. Instead, I found a new voice. Late one night, unable to sleep, I opened my laptop and began to write. The words spilled out faster than I could edit them. How I cut off my toxic family. It wasn't polished, wasn't meant to be profound. It was raw, honest, and filled with every scar I had carried in silence. I hit publish on a small blog platform, then forgot about it. 2 days later, my inbox exploded. Messages from strangers around the world flooded in. Women who had been mocked by their sisters, men abandoned by their parents, people who had spent lifetimes trying to earn love that was never given. One comment stopped me cold. "You saved my life. I thought I was crazy, but your words made me realize I'm not alone." I pressed my hand over my mouth, tears streaming silently. For so long I had been invisible. Now my pain had become someone else's lantern in the dark. It humbled me. It healed me. She wasn't just rebuilding her life, she was rewriting the rules. The diner had become my refuge, but eventually I wanted something that was mine from the ground up. I poured my savings, the very money Amelia had once exploited, into a small cafe on the corner of a quiet street. It wasn't glamorous, second-hand furniture, a chipped espresso machine, but it pulsed with warmth. I painted the walls myself, picked every chair, brewed the first pot of coffee. On opening day, I flipped the sign to open and watched as customers trickled in. Some were regulars from the diner, others were strangers curious about the cafe with the handwritten chalkboard sign. Word spread quickly. People came not just for the coffee, but for the story. A local journalist wrote a follow-up piece, From Waitress to Cafe Owner, a journey of boundaries and bravery. Customers left notes tucked under saucers. "Thank you for reminding me to be strong. Your cafe feels like home." My cafe wasn't just a business, it was a testament that I had survived and transformed. Among the regulars, one man stood out. He always ordered the same thing, black coffee, no sugar, no cream. He sat by the window, reading quietly, sometimes glancing up to smile when I refilled his cup. It wasn't until weeks later that I recognized him. He had been at Amelia's engagement party months before, one of the distant acquaintances in the crowd when everything imploded. Unlike the others, he hadn't joined the laughter. He had simply watched, eyes filled with something that looked like pity. One afternoon, as I wiped down his table, he spoke softly. "I was there that night. I saw what they did to you." My breath caught. He met my gaze steadily. "You didn't deserve it, and you're stronger than they'll ever admit." His words struck deeper than he knew. It wasn't a fairy tale moment, but it was real. Slowly, over cups of coffee and lingering conversations, we built something fragile, something gentle. It was the kind of love that didn't demand sacrifice, that didn't come with strings of manipulation. It was respect, plain and steady, and it grew in the sunlight of my new life. One evening, I closed the cafe, turned off the lights, and stood in the quiet. My reflection in the glass door didn't look like the broken woman who once cried in the diner's kitchen. It looked like someone who had been forged in fire and come out luminous. I was no longer the outcast my family mocked. I was empowered, loved, thriving. She didn't just survive her family, she transcended them,